So here we are now in part 3 of this video. In part 2 we got all of our, walk cycle basics done in here, and we were getting ready to make a few changes to break up the action a little bit. So here's what I think I'm going to do to sort of break this up a little bit, is I'm going to have him come walking along as we've got him, and then part way I'm going to make him come to a stop. Not a complete stop, however, as in, both feet on the floor. Rather something of a surprise stop. This is something that you see birds doing quite often, or at least you do birds that tend to spend a lot of time walking around on the ground. They'll come along and something catches their attention and they sort of stop for a minute, startled, look around, and commonly what you'll see is they stop on the one foot. They don't come to a standstill with both their feet on the floor. They'll sort of come and hold one leg up whilst resting their weight on the other leg. So I'm going to do that. He's going to catch a little look for something, sort of stop for a moment, go, what's going on here, then just decide, nope, it's okay, and carry on his merry way. So that's going to involve, of course, editing the animation that we've got. We could, of course, just put it on here and then, continue to walk him on after this point, but I'm going to choose that I want to reuse the walk I've already got afterwards and sort of have him stop about halfway point, perhaps here, in fact. It's more or less halfway through his whole walk. So since I'm going to be having him stop on the one leg, and of course there's no way to know if, this particular kind of creature would have done that. I've talked about reference and how they would or wouldn't move. There's no way of knowing if this is authentic, but there's no way of knowing that it's definitely not authentic. In the case of the bigger animals like T-Rex, you could probably make an argument that it's unrealistic because they're just so big and heavy. Stopping and standing on one leg like that is probably not correct. But in the case of these smaller ones, I think it's plausible. So as I say, with our halfway point, we're basically going to be stopping somewhere around the passing pose here. So what I'm going to do is grab all of his controls here, and let's have a look for what we've got. Well, we've got quite a, few key points coming thereafter. So what I'm just going to do is grab all of these frames for everything after this point. I'm just going to wind out my timeline a bit here, and I'm just going to shift them forward in time just by some amount. It doesn't really matter what for the minute, just to give myself a bit of working space, and so you can see that we wind up with the very slow in to when he would actually start walking next. I'm then going to pop open the graph editor here and just come down and select all of the channels for all of the items. And so that I can continue animating without having some sort of slip type interruption, I'm just going to grab a chunk at the beginning here so I can be sure that I've got all of the, first frames of whatever, and I'm just going to set them to stepped like that. Let's double check that that has indeed done what I want it to. So all except for that tail key there. So let's just grab a bigger chunk here, and there we go. And let's just hit those two stepped. I can always come back, of course, and fix that later. And what we should see is that now, okay, so my animation comes and it comes to a dead stop. So I can do a whole bunch of stuff here, and I don't have to worry about where he's interpolating to in the next set of keys. And then I'll be able to unstep those afterwards. So this is our starting point for working in our new in-between that we're going to create, or our in-between action rather than an in-between pose, really. So I'm just going to shorten my timeline so I don't have to see those frames right now. So it is as if he just comes along and then comes to a dead stop. So what's going to happen here? Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just grab all of his controls again, and I'm going to take any that are on this last frame and I'm going to space them out by one single frame like that. So I've essentially got him slowing down as he comes out of wherever he was posed, previously to that. He's starting to slow his pace. In fact, I might even just do it for one additional frame, so we've got an extra 2 frames there. So he sort of slows now as he comes up into this step. Let's just see how it plays here. There we go, we can see that he is indeed producing something of a slowdown. Those extra 2 frames, you know, don't overslow him. It's not like he begins to float, but we can see that he is definitely producing something of a slowdown. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the root item itself and I'm going to bump that an additional 2 frames. So what we see is, even though his legs are still going, that contacting leg, of course, that's in contact with the floor, that's really where he's starting to slow up now. And I'm also going to begin rising him up here at his root. We'll get the appropriate knee controller, which is this one, and push it back. So of course he's pressing more from his knee there. And then let's say, well, how many frames was that? That was quite a few. That's 9. So I'm going to say, let's just say 7 frames later, I'll just dodge him back a small amount like this. So of course, you know, you've got that little bit of follow through bounce. He stops and recoils slightly. Maybe that's even just a little bit too much. Let's push him there. Okay, so let's take a look and see how we are looking with this. There we go. We've got that sort of stop and bounce. Okay, that's pretty good. So it'll come up like that, and what I'm also going to do is rotate him up. He's, you know, caught a scent of something or a sound of something, who knows, and so he's a little like, hello, what's going on here? Peaks himself up a bit. We'll anticipate this action here from the actual spine. So at this point, where ordinarily he would be starting to bounce up on 75, I'm going to keep him dodged down a little bit. I'm also going to dodge the neck down slightly there and come back to the head and dodge that up. So that gives him this little sort of slink into it. We'll keep that as a hold for just 2 frames there. Again, on all 3 of those, although not so much of the head, because we'll try and keep that level. And then let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We'll really start to raise him up and bring his neck up and bring his head down, as if he's really, you know, piquing his interest in something there. Let's see if that's a bit fast. It might be. No, perhaps not. That's actually might be quite good. Right, I think he is pushing a little far forwards. So what I'm going to do is commence slowing him down ever so slightly just at this frame, so basically pull him back for that, and then at this frame and the subsequent one, and that's most easily done in Graph Editor here. Grab both of these 2 frames, that'll be these 2 there, and just pull those a little bit further backwards like that. Let's see how that begins to appear. Now that's not bad. That slink back to the second point there is perhaps a little bit slow, so I'm going to take that frame, push it down. Let's try 2, shall we? There should be reasonably swift there. I think once that's splined, that will start to look better. So full 5 frames, that should be ample. And so at the 6th frame after that, I'll let the body just dodge down that tiny amount again there. And the same here. The head, so there's that little bit of overlapping action going on. Okay, so far I think that's pretty good. However, what I really want to do, I think, looking at it, is of course, you know, he's catching a sound or a smell or something. That head needs to lead. That needs to start going up first. So we've got his body does the little dodge down there, but then at this point, 77, it's only 2 frames. That's the hold, of course, for the spine. I'm going to move that to 3 frames for the head and neck. And I'm going to have already started pulling the neck up by this point, and also the head will be coming up at this point here as well. So he's sort of leading that action with his head there. I perhaps pulled it up a little bit too much. I'm getting overly enthusiastic about the amount of pull on it. So let's just soften that out some like this. Let's see how that looks. Ah, there we go. We get the sense of that head leading what he's seeing or hearing or thinking there. Now, we're only doing this from the side. Really, we want to be doing this in all directions. So let's get his hip. Let's come out to these frames here, and let's find the heading keys at this point. And what I want to do for this is to give that a little nudge. So let's say he's looking, sideways. Whatever it is, it's somewhere off to the side. So he's turning himself to see his, direction of interest, of course. And what we'll also do with this neck is, as it starts to come down, so from here to here, we'll already have started to slink it a little bit to the side, and we'll certainly have started to slink the head to the side here like this. So he's coming along and something catches his attention. There we go. Obviously we need that to be now starting to weave its way round, and we're putting bank on the neck so as we can keep the head level as it turns on its heading there. We turn the head again, looking like this. When we come out to this pose, by this point his spine is sort of turning, twisting itself around, as again does the neck, even more so, and the head, so coming like this. So there we've got this real, hello, what's going on over there? What have I seen? What have I heard? And of course let's just get rid of that frame there for the head, neck, spine, and we'll put a replacement in for it with this new sideways posing. Let's just see how that looks for the moment. Aha, there we go. We're definitely getting this sense of him catching something there. He is quite a nimble-ish character, obviously. This is one of the heavy ones. He's not going to be darting like a tiny little chicken-sized creature, but we do want him to have a bit of speed. So let's really accelerate the turn, or the initial turn on that head there. So that's coming in much quicker. And let's push it here as well. See how that appears. That should give us something a little bit more. There we go. That's more like it. It's starting to look quite natural. Now we'll work the tail, because of course he's going to want to work that for balance. So let's have a look in top view here. Now as he begins to go, I'm going to have it preemptively come over this side. Of course that appears off balancing, but when you consider these over this one leg, it's not, and it's also making a little preemptive or anticipatory action for it going the other way. So he starts to go like this, and then at that point, as he really rears and comes out here, it's going to be a couple of frames after that arrival, the tail can really swish to that side as well. So now we get this sort of balancing act going on of the body and the tail opposing one another to help him balance. And we'll also do a little something on the end tail section there, and we'll just lag it behind the first tail section by a small amount. So let's see how that works in playback. So as we can see it all going on, that's not bad at all. Obviously we'll put some little overshoot and waggle on the tail, as it were, as it comes to rest, so it's not just a dead stop like that. So let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 frames should be good. I'm going to key that there, and also the other one, and then if I come back to the previous frame, I'll just overshoot it a little bit so it has that small amount of overshoot and return. And there we go, that's a bit better there. We've got that little bounce to it as it arrives. What we'll also do is pulling himself up. Would we drop the tail down? Well, he might be picking it up in actual fact. I think if we put it down on the 77 here at this point, and then when he comes up, he'll bring the tail up as well. So it very much comes into a alert upwards position like this, which of course is quite common in animals. You'll see, of course, when they are, startled or worried or something, up comes the tail. It's not uncommon. Cats, dogs, many animals can do that. Is it good and true for dinos? Don't know. But it certainly adds a little something there. It definitely gives a sense of the interest being piqued. He's expressing that through, of course, the entirety of his body language. So far here, so good. So where to go next with this then? Well, first of all, whilst I like the head and the body action there, I think I am just going to speed that hip action up just a scotch, just one frame perhaps. Let's see how that works. That might be just a little swifter, just coming into it, because of course he is taking something of a startle, so I do expect his motion to have a little bit of snap to it. He is obviously, you know, a larger thing. He's not darting, as I said before, like a smaller animal would, but I am expecting some sort of, you know, snap in that reaction of his. So perhaps I'll take just a slightly swifter down punch and see how that works with him. That's not bad, and then that does want a little tightening there as well. Let's just look at the action of that hip. Yeah, that's more like it, I think. Yeah, okay. So with that in mind, what we then do, of course, is to take our keys for the head, neck, tail and spine here, and we're going to nudge those accordingly. So of course there's that, and he goes into that little dip before coming up. So I'm going to take everything here and punch it back one frame. So that means his little dip starts out there, and we start to roll up here and reach that point. There's a couple of keys close together, so I'll look at which items those are on in isolation in a moment. Otherwise, I'm going to take everything else here and I'm going to bring it down by 2, like this. That works. Well, that's a little too fast, so let's take it again, push it out by, pushed it back out by 2, let's push it out by just the 1. That's a bit punchier, a little snappier. I do quite like that action there. So yes, that's got a bit more of a snap and punch to it. Gives a greater sense of alertness, I think, having that additional speed makes him look just that little bit more alert. So let's see what was going on in these just couple of close together frames here. I suspect it's stuff with the head and neck where we've got a fair bit of overlap going on. Of course we have that neck there, then it, you know, does a very quick dodge there. That's just 3 frames, sort of still pointing in that direction for 3, so that's good there. Let's take a look at the neck. Yeah, that's also got a 3 frame kick on it now, and that's come down to 2, so actually I'm just going to extend that spine out by 1 there. Just helps to smooth out the motion, that little extra bit there. Okay, so that's really what I'm wanting, I think. Play back okay? Yes, you do. Pretty good. Okay, also I'm not just going to have the hip come up here, I'm also going to just push it ever so slightly on its X. Of course, again, you know, it's one of those things, we don't push the hip tremendously far, of course, and we do push it in a sideways direction, but we are going to have a little bit of space to do that here, which way we wanted to go that away. So he's already moving that way, of course, so we're really just pushing in just that extra little amount like that there, so that helps him to sort of carry off, and we'll also of course just dodge him back afterwards ever so slightly. So again, you get just a little bit of bounce in the motion where it's coming from, going to, and of course settling like that. I think pretty good. Very small amounts of movement here on the X. That's quite decent. Yeah, that's reasonably good, I think. Okay, we're going to take that hip again, and I'm going to put, let's say, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 frames. I'm going to have a hold. At the minute that will do nothing, but of course once we get into splining, that will give me a little more settling time, so we'll come and we'll overshoot just a tiny amount and settle on the different positions for the hip there. And we also of course will have the same on the tail, which at the minute is just going sploing, as it were, so that will take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 just to come to a full rest like that. So what are we going to have him do once he's up like this? Well, of course, you know, look at animals and how they behave. You know, they'll spot something and they'll just, you know, if they're not sure they've seen it, their eyes, their heads will just dart about looking for it. So what we're going to have him do is have him come up like this. He's going to hold for a moment, and then he's just going to, glance around a little bit just to try and clock on to whatever it is he thinks he's seen or heard or what have you. So let's see how long we really want him to stay still for. And this is why you need to be able to play it back so you can sort of count it in your mind. I think he's probably going to hold almost up until this point, so almost a full second. Actually, let's just go out for the full 110, shall we? So let's wind our frames forward here, and forward even more than that. Of course, we'll grab all of the controllers here. We've got our secondary frame set here for the further walk. Let's just bunch them all on even further along like that. Okay. So I think I'm going to have him holding until the full 110 here, maybe slightly before. Let's say 108. We can always move this, of course, if we do desire a little bit of extra time. So the bits that we're going to move when you have him, shift his gaze, let's just key all of these items, shall we? The main, spine, head, neck, tail, as well as the root there. So he's currently looking off over here. We're going to make him look, I think, a little bit further to his right. That action will begin with the head and neck. So there they are. Only be a short action, so let's say 5 frames there. We make a little twist like this. And of course the head is the main item which is turning. Just use the world axis so I can get it on its level like this. Works pretty well. Just pinch the neck up a little bit like that. Give it a little twisty twist around its bank there to tease it in with the head. So let's have a quick look. It comes up. Look. Okay, not bad. Good timing, I think. 5 frames there. It's okay. It's only a short little move. When he does that, he'll also move his spine, but we're going to now move that, jump that over 1 frame here. So his head just begins the movement. It leads. The spine comes in pretty much at the same time, so only 4 for that, but a much smaller move there in the spine, much more subtle. Of course, the main thing he's moving is just his head. So the further down movements are a lot slower, or a lot more minor. The hip, I'm going to move on 1 frame again, so that'll just be delayed again with the head leading, and I'm going to take this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's got a little bit of extra time after the head, and we're just turning it ever so slightly there. And I'm also pushing it slightly off to the left and pushing it slightly backwards as well, and also a little bit down. So he's sort of, resetting himself, going, what is it? What's going on? Let's have a little peek, see how that looks. With these little nuanced motions, you will often need to do this. It's a lot of playback and review to make sure that you're getting something that, look at that, that's lovely. It does that little crouch there. You see that? It's like, what is it? Comes along, hey, eek. Look at that, it's lovely. Okay, that's a good time. I do like that. That's nice. Pleased with that, I definitely think. So, since he's doing that movement there, okay, he's coming a little bit further to his side there, and he can rebalance himself by pushing the tail ever so slightly back the other way, in fact. So the tail, that can of course shunt on 1 frame, as of course can the other tail controller, that can shunt on 1 frame. And this will go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, let's say 6, because of course it's not a huge move, and so there doesn't need to be a lot of overlap. In reality, of course, there probably would be, but it would be a fraction of a second, probably not even a full frame's worth. So I'm just going to come here, basically just keeping it in time with the movement of the main root controller there, and just give that a little dodge back this way, and I'll do the same on this section of the tail there. Just give that very small little dodge, and then at the 3, let's see, what's he doing? He's coming down, isn't he? So what I'm actually going to do is raise the tail up ever so slightly like this. So it's just that little extra peak of interest coming out there of the tail. Looks pretty good. Long up. Yeah. Okay, very small slight movement on the tail there. If anything, we can possibly oversell that, I think. He is only, of course, making a small move there on the body, but we could accentuate it by the amount of movement or relative movement on that tail. So it sort of lets the head is moving the most, and so the tail can almost move the most as well. I think that works. So I'm also going to drag that out just to make it a moment longer. I'm going to try 2 frames just to see what it does. And does it play in? I don't think that's too bad. Let's just see it again. Yeah. Okay, maybe that's a little overstating too much, a little too much overlap. Let's push it back. And what I'll do is also come out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to give that again just a little curve frame, a little wave frame that it can have when we go to spline interpolation. So he's up and he checks. He'll hold it for a second, check back, and then we'll begin to slope him off and back into his walk again. So let's see how long we're going to hold this one. He's up, I think probably until about here. So a little bit longer than before. So again, let's grab those pertinent controllers here. We'll hold them at this point. Now we're not going to make this move as fast. We'll make it a little bit slower. Last one was 5, so I'm going to say, let's say 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And at this point, I'm going to bring the neck round, push it back, let him look back in the, more or less in the direction he was previously looking, like this. Yeah, so obviously he's come up, he's got this initial startle. He's still a little bit startled, and he starts to feel at ease, and so his next move, his next little check of the, scan of the horizon is just that little bit slower. He's not quite so, worried or aggrieved or, on edge. So yeah, there we go. See, little sharp movements and then a slower one. I quite like that. I think that works pretty well. So that's there. Then again, we'll do the spine, which once again we'll do in the same pattern. We'll put that 1 frame over, and then bring it across 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So it times in again with the head and neck there. Just slink that off, a little turn, a little bob down again, just to show he's starting to relax a little bit. Take the hip, bump it over 1 there. Again, we'll make this nice and slow. Let's make it full 8. So that brings us out to 150. So that's arriving, 1 frame after the head there. And we'll just let him tip down a tiny amount, so he's just relaxing himself there and beginning to straighten out just a little bit. And just a little tiny move back there on the X. And what about up or down? Perhaps actually shifting, or continuing, I should say, to shift downwards. Yeah, I think that works nicely. Let's just play it and see. Yes, I do believe that works. See it from this angle, which is quite a good angle, I think. Yeah, that seems pretty reasonable to me. What we're getting is, you'll notice, of course, when he does that second little look, the head turns more than the neck does. But on this second look back, the head and neck turn broadly the same amount. The head is turning a little bit extra, but it's much more unified turn between the head and all of the neck joints. So again, we're getting this sort of asymmetry in the motion, which helps to create this sort of naturalism. It's not just a case of, rear up, 5 frames pan left, 5 frames pan right. It's less robotic. It's little details like that that will help begin to sort of sell the idea of this as some kind of a natural movement. Gives again the sense of intention and thought, and a real character behind the character. Just whilst he's up there, I'm actually going to notice that I want to twist my head ever so slightly. I'm just going to bring up the graph for it so I can find the bank which represents that hold there, and I'm just coming closer on all of this. So there it is. And which way do I want to turn it? Other way. There we go. That keeps his head more or less on a flat level, which I think is a bit more appropriate here. Get that there. Yeah, okay. Quite pleased with that. And I think also when he comes back here, he can be starting to bring his head down as well. So we're not quite so chin up, which of course is one of the things that gives him that sense of being, on alert, as it were. He's there, he looks, and yeah, okay, starting to relax there at the end. So we like that. So again, I need more space here, or more space in time before we click into the walk again. So once again, let's grab all those controls, grab the old frame set here, which actually it's not those ones, sorry, I've selected too many. This is the frame set, which is the whole next walking section. Let's just rattle it on ahead in time again. We can of course double check I'm not missing keys or accidentally breaking anything. Nope, that is a good and proper walk there. So far so good. So let's just section that out of our timeline so I don't have to be missed or confused by it. Okay, so we've gotten to this point then. He's done this nice little slope back, and then we're going to have him slope off and move back into his walk. There. Let me just count this as we're going, and back, and okay, so we're going to begin sloping. Again, he's going to hold just before he begins sloping, so I'm going to say 172. I'm going to key his root, and this is when we're going to begin sloping him back into a walk. So he's been up, he's had a look, and how will he do this? Well, of course, he's going to slowly begin to accelerate himself forwards. So normally from this point in the normal walk cycle, we'd be about, give or take, 7 frames. Of course, 14 frame cycle, we're more or less at the halfway mark, so give or take 7 frames it would be to his next contact. And indeed, let me just open up my timeline again so I can see, or I should see, that indeed the first frame of my walk there is indeed the contact pose. So again, he's going to be moving out of it slowly, so I'm going to say, in this case it would be 7, I'm going to say 12 frames. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 there, by which point I should aim to have him back in contact pose again. So let's bring up my timeline, get all of my controls, grab all of the frames of this next walking chunk, and let's bring them down there so as that first frame is on 184. So we should go from about 172 to 184. Well, actually not 184, but where is it? There it is. There's the contact pose. There it's 189. So let's grab, once again, all of these guys. And so that 189 there wants to become 184. So let's drag that all back. It should be 5. Yeah, there it is. So there we go. So 184 is now my new contact pose. So let's get all of his controls up in graph so that we can select all of the channels, take all of these guys that were stepped, doesn't matter, I'll just select the lot and just turn them back into linear. And there we go, we're getting our move to slope off again. Obviously, when I relinearize those keys, then ones that did have a, that weren't held, because obviously I didn't key a hold, like this foot is now ever so slowly slinking forwards during that whole time, which we're not going to want. But look at that, that does ease out quite nicely if we look at the motion on the root there, and also a little bit into the head. that's starting to work out nicely, so only a bit of tweening needed here. We'll also need to, of course, tween up those currently sliding keys, but you should already be able to broadly see the general intent of the motion here. So come along, look around, and off we go again. So there we are. We're getting a reasonably good timing. It's a good place to work from. So let's start putting in the holds that are going to, just clean this end bit of sliding up here. First thing I'm going to look at is what's happening to the spine and head and neck. The easiest thing is just to come back to the good old toolbox here, and obviously that is sliding from its last position where I had him look to there. It's just continuing. So what I'm going to do is just wait until right here where the main root starts to move. I'm just going to key you there, copy that pose that we had there and just paste it in here. So now the head and neck there is holding, and I'm also going to do the same actually on the tail here. So go back and copy the pose we have there and just paste it in there. Right, so there we go, that holds a little better there. He holds that last little look before he starts to slink off. So of course we get something like this here, which is, yeah, that's reasonable. What I want him to do is, as he begins his slink, as he starts moving his body, I just want him to maintain, that head position momentarily. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take head, neck and spine here. See, we immediately come into this keyframe, which is of course one of the walking keys. I'm just going to delete that out. So that's a bit of a slower movement now that we've got there. It's going across 12 frames. And what I'm going to do is once again just copy this pose, and for the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I'm going to say 6 frames. I'll just paste it back in there, and then what I'm going to do here is just adjust the pose ever so slightly. We'll leave the body fixed where it is, we'll leave the spine fixed where it is. And I'm just going to put a little turn on the neck here, just to sort of keep it, aiming in that same direction. So he's sort of holding his head around, as it were. Possibly easiest if I just sort of spin my view like this, so I'm looking directly at him, and then I can just make adjustments here, so he's still looking directly at me. Give him a little twist there, little edge. So there we go. See, he sort of slinks his head and neck to just sort of maintain that direction that he's looking in whilst starting to move here. So we get this sort of, okay, I'm moving my body first. He's leading with the body, but he's just leaving his head looking wherever it is that he's been looking, just to make sure that the coast is clear or what have you. So then he comes to this point. Okay, that's fine. And then off to here. So what I'm going to do is grab the spine, head and neck. I'm going to delay this frame by 1, so it actually comes in 1 later than it ordinarily would. And on this frame I'm going to make an adjustment. So what I'll say is that